How did you expose the officer everyone thought was a hero? Captain Blake was a legend at our base in Germany. Purple Heart from Iraq. Bronze Star with Valor. The guy had photos with generals, gave speeches to new recruits, and everyone wanted to be on his team. I was a specialist working in supply when I started noticing weird things about his deployment stories. He'd talk about this firefight in Fallujah where he saved 6 guys. How he pulled his wounded squad leader out while taking enemy fire. The whole base had heard the story a dozen times. Problem was, I'd actually been in Fallujah during that exact time period. Different unit, but same area. And I'd never heard of any firefight matching his description. I started paying closer attention. At a battalion barbecue, Captain Blake was telling the story again. He mentioned specific streets, specific dates. I pulled out my phone and started taking notes. That night, I went through my old deployment photos and mission logs I'd kept. The date he mentioned, our entire area had been on lockdown due to a sandstorm. No patrols went out, no firefights happened. I thought maybe I'd remembered wrong, so I reached out to some guys I'd served with. Sent them messages asking if they remembered any major firefights on that specific date. They all said the same thing. Nothing happened that day. One of my buddies, who'd been with the unit Captain Blake claimed to serve with, said something that made my stomach drop. Blake? That guy was on rear detachment. He never deployed with us to Fallujah. He stayed at Camp Liberty doing admin work. I didn't want to believe it. This was a captain, a decorated officer. But I kept digging. I requested his official service record through the Freedom of Information Act. Took 3 months to get it back. When it arrived, my hands were shaking as I opened it. Captain Blake had deployed to Iraq. That part was true. But he'd been assigned to a logistics unit at a major base. Never saw combat. Never left the wire. His Purple Heart? Awarded for injuries sustained when he fell off a ladder while moving supplies in the warehouse. His Bronze Star? Administrative award for managing the supply chain, not a Valor award like he'd been telling everyone. I sat on this information for 2 weeks. Part of me wanted to just forget about it. Blake was well liked. I was just a specialist. Who would believe me? But every time I saw him giving speeches to young privates telling them about courage under fire, it made me sick. These kids looked up to him. They thought they were learning from a real combat veteran. I finally went to the Inspector General's office with everything I had. Printed emails, service records, deployment rosters, sworn statements from guys who'd actually been there. The IG investigator was skeptical at first. Then he started making phone calls, pulling official records, cross-referencing stories with actual after-action reports. 2 months later, Captain Blake was called into a meeting with the battalion commander and the IG team. I wasn't there, but I heard he walked in cocky, walked out gray-faced and silent. Turns out he'd been embellishing his service for 6 years. The fake stories had helped him get promoted ahead of officers with real combat experience. He'd used his invented heroism to get choice assignments. He was allowed to quietly retire instead of facing court-martial, but they made him return his Valor awards. The Bronze Star with Valor got downgraded back to what it really was, an administrative achievement medal. The base went quiet about it. Command didn't want the embarrassment of admitting they'd been promoting a fraud for years. But word got around anyway. Some guys called me a snitch, said I should have kept my mouth shut. But more guys, especially combat veterans who'd actually earned their medals, thanked me privately. One sergeant major who'd done 3 tours in Afghanistan pulled me aside at the PX. You did the right thing, son. Stolen valor isn't just about fake stories. It's about real veterans who actually bled for those medals. Captain Blake's name disappeared from all the motivational posters around base. His speech about courage got pulled from the newcomer orientation. It was like he'd never existed. I found out later that several other soldiers had suspected something but were too afraid to speak up against an officer. I just happened to be the one with proof.